Labor Secretary. We're at Elise Stefanik. We're at Doge. We're at the meat of this now.
Okay.
So you want to lead us off here with about Lori, or how do you want to take it from Doge, or where do we go from
We'll take it with Lori. Lori Chavez-DeRemer.
And you guys, this is really, again, this has been an archived piece that just needs to be in time, but this is really what a lot of you should listen to. This is very important.
She is very controversial behind the scenes amongst allies in all sorts of the what I call the worker freedom movements, including the International Franchise Association and the Chamber of Commerce and all that the traditional Republican pro-business coalitions, and the reason that she's controversial is because she's only one of 3 Republicans that co-sponsored the PRO Act, which is like, you can't get any more opposite of worker freedom than the PRO Act. And she was playing footsie with the Teamsters. And so a lot of just to back up a little bit, our coalition, like with Kim, Fight for Freelancers,
yes,
and all of our freelancer movement that are trying to fight these regulations that are coming after our careers.
Right.
We supported the Trump era rule that was deployed into the Fair Labor Standards Act in 2021, right before he left office, by his previous labor secretary, Eugene Scalia, that gave clarity and certainty about the definition of an independent contractor. And then when Biden's DOL came in, they rescinded that rule. They wanted to rescind it and replace it with a more restrictive test, which they ended up doing. And so it was very interesting to try to corral my bipartisan coalition, our bipartisan coalition, and Kim will agree with this too, people that are triggered by the name Trump, to say this is what we want when they open it up for public comments, because they have to do that in order to implement a regulation. It has to be open to public comments. And there was something like 55,000 public comments. Some of them were spam, but be that as it may, we had thousands of people coming in and either giving written testimony or oral public comments during their comment period session. And we had to teach people how to embrace the word Trump era DOL rule, because we wanted it to stay the way it was.
Right.
And so when Trump won the election, we're like, a lot of us felt, well, maybe we can breathe easier with the department.
Nobody thought this would happen.
Nobody thought it was.
Nobody.
There was a collective gasp and it was because of Teamster Sean O'Brien, who decided he wasn't going to endorse a Democrat or a Republican. And as you recall, he was at the Republican National Convention speaking, which was a rarity for any, because union bosses and institutional unions are traditionally 99% Democrat donors,
So, and she was pro-act too, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Straight up. So everybody was freaking out, and they're still freaking out. But I decided that I want to find out, more about this person, because she was only a freshman congressman for less than 2 years, and from Oregon, and from a District 5, which was traditionally a blue district. And when she won it, it was a kind of an anomaly because they had outlined the jurisdiction to make it a little bit more purple at that time. So she just won by a hair. She was only in Congress for 2 years. And the PRO Act, as you know, was first introduced in 2019. There's 2 or 3 different times it's been introduced. And in the 118th Congress, which is the Congress now, it was introduced as H.R. 20, and it was introduced by Ranking Member Bobby Scott, and he was introduced on February 28th of 2023, Well, she didn't sign on as a co-sponsor until August or July, I should say, of 2024, just a couple of months before. She was in a very hotly contested race for her
Mhm.
seat, and she was getting union endorsement because she was friendly with the trade unions there, the police, the public safety unions and stuff like that. So they were endorsing her. So I think for whatever reason, because her dad was a Teamster or something, um, I think it was just out of political expediency that she put her name on that bill at the very end of almost the end of the 118th Congress, because it had no way of passing. But she still has to explain herself, because the provisions in that bill, especially for independent contractors and franchisees and right to work states and people
Yeah.
not having to be forced to be in unions and pay union dues to, all of those kinds of things are just antithetical to, what the Trump agenda or any kind of, worker freedom agenda would be, and it's that bill never had enough votes to pass in the Senate. So it's always been stalled out anyways, but she has a lot to answer for that, so I don't know what they're doing behind closed doors, how she's explaining that. But I decided to just look at every one of her tweets for the last 2 years in both of her Twitter accounts or her X accounts, and watch
Mhm.
every single interview that she's ever done and read every single article that's ever been written about her. And she is not a labor shill in the least. She is not a Lorena Gonzalez or Vina Dubal or Julie Sue. She barely ever even tweeted about unions. Maybe 2 or 3 times did she? Or I guess I counted 5 tweets, and it was mostly about, we hope the Teamsters can and the UPS can, work out a deal and get together and organize, so I don't know that if she's just an optics pick, you
Well, that's
know.
what I was going to say here is that so there's a quote. Here's Trump's quote, first of all, is that Lori has worked tirelessly with both business and labor to build America's workforce and support the hardworking men and women of America. But right beneath it, there's a Teamsters head, Sean O'Brien,
Mhm.
um, posted a statement thanking the president elect for putting American workers first with this choice. So
Right.
here's the only thing I can think. Did he just do it to get the Teamsters?
Yes. Yes.
That's it, and almost like
The problem
blindly.
is that he already had the rank and file, uh, you know, union members in those sectors voting for him anyway. He didn't need the blessing. He didn't need to be acclaimed footsie or cozying up to the institutional, union boss, Sean
Hmm.
O'Brien, but he did. And Lori Chavez-DeRemer was Sean O'Brien's pick. And because she lost her seat, she was available. Now she comes from it's interesting background. She was a mayor of a small town in Oregon for almost 10 years, and she's married to an anesthesiologist, and they years ago started an anesthesiology staffing agency that's very successful, and they actually farm out independent contractor nurse anesthetists. One of my friends, actually, her daughter's one of the recruiters. Lori Chavez-DeRemer's daughter works for the family business, and Jennifer actually called up there and said, do you hire independent contractor nurse anesthetists? Well, if you know anything about AB5, nurse anesthetists in California are not allowed to be independent contractors, and it's wreaking havoc
Right.
in operating rooms all across the state.
Because you
So
and
if
I have
I
discussed
ever had
this
the
before.
opportunity
So for the
to,
people just joining us, a lot of these jobs in under AB5 were lost, and so like a rural hospital can't afford a salaried position for some of these people.
right. So if I
I
had
mean,
the
they
chance,
probably could afford it, but they won't.
well, I can we can post another article in the show notes to document how the reasons why not having access to independent contractor nurse anesthetists is very difficult for hospitals all across the state in terms of, scheduling and timing and this, that, and the other.
Hmm.
Um, but if I were sitting in front of Lori Chavez-DeRemer, I would say, do you know what's going on in California with the nurse anesthetists and the anesthesiology sector because of AB5? Is this, do you really think that, making, I mean, and I don't think that she, I mean, I would have a hard time believing, even though she signed on to the PRO Act as one of 3 Republican co-sponsors, that she would be anti-independent contractor or anything.
But if she did, and he had to remove her, how we were talking about with other positions and how that might happen, wouldn't that almost create not only just bring them back to even, but a negative with Sean O'Brien?
Well,
if she gets in there for a month and he's like, get out of here, isn't Sean O'Brien and the Teamsters going to be like, well, wait, we don't like that.
Well,
what'd you just do? Would you just try and appease me or what?
Well, I think something that we got a little bit of a clue on was the National Labor Relations Board, which is not part of the Department of Labor, but it's a separate thing that ensures, protects workers' rights to form unions and collectively bargain and stuff like that. Well, Schumer last week was trying last minute to extend the tenure of the chairman there, who's by 5 years. And so JD Vance, and I mean, usually a lot of times we were thinking that, this is going to fall through the cracks and it's going to be a Democrat majority in the NLRB for Trump's term. And the senators raced back, GOP, including JD Vance, to vote against extending her stay and also thereby taking away the Democrat majority on the NLRB. And of course, the NLRB is what, the PRO Act really addresses in terms of the ABC test. It's about, determining who's an employee, who can be saying that independent contractors can be organized into unions under the NLRA. So I thought that was a really interesting sign that, he's not just going to bend, they're not bending the knee, at least on the GOP side, to the Teamster agenda. And I don't see that it does them any good to do that anyways, Trump. I don't get it. I think they just want, maybe they wanted somebody in there that, has at least a little bit of a friendly bridge that can speak to that speaks a little bit of their language, because they're probably more interested in apprenticeship programs and prevailing wages and safe working environments and negotiating. There's going to be the longshoreman strike coming up, and even this Amazon thing right now. They probably want somebody in there that can, maybe he thinks that it's just a sort of an olive branch to unions, to have somebody that kind of gives the appearance of being more friendly to them.
Is she friendly? Okay, so if I had to ask you this, because you and I could sit here and list 100 reasons why we don't like her going in, but if you had to play the card of list 2 reasons why she'd be good at this job. I'm challenging you here, Karen. So
apparently she's an amiable person, I guess, that she can work across the aisle. That's the only thing I can come up with, because she doesn't have any experience in labor law per se. But then again, you look at Julie Sue. Look what she did to
I actually just saw an article about her. I think it was yesterday, about they're like, we're going to keep her. I'm going, for what?
Anybody's better.
For 29 days? What are you talking about?
What you really have to look at is, who is he going to appoint to head the wage and hour division, because that's where that DOL rule came in through. Who's he going to appoint to OSHA? Who are all of these people, in the inner workings of the DOL? How are they going to, who is he going to appoint? There's 2 open seats now at the National Labor Relations Board. Who is he going to appoint to that? And so when the GOP stopped that vote on that woman who is going to be given another 5 years or whatever at the National Labor Relations Board, all the usual suspects like Lorena Gonzalez and Vina Duval and all of them, and all the unions, they were just aghast. This is horrible. This is horrible. He can't do
Right.
that. They can't take away our majority. Well, why can't they? It's a new administration.
So I'm going to go a little back into the comments before we fall too far behind, because I see Bud Soda. He was living up in, it was near Rome, New York, up north New York. And so Elise was his representative. He now lives in Pittsburgh. But he's saying that Elise should have been the Department of Labor pick. She's pro trucker and independent contractor, Chamber of Commerce, and is pro corporatism.
She would have been a great pick. I agree with you, Bud Soda. I love Elise Stefanik. I was going to post this in the show notes. In fact, I'll do it right now. She wrote an op-ed for Newsweek a while back and quoted me in my stories about AB5. She named me by name, and she was one of our staunchest allies in the independent contractor worker freedom movement. So, but she's going to be going to the UN now. In an odd twist of kind of an odd twist, she when Trump appointed or picked Lori Chavez-DeRemer to be Labor Secretary nominee, Elise tweeted out her endorsement. I actually called their office and I said, well, I just wonder if I could talk to Representative Stefanik and ask her if she's not concerned about the fact that Lori Chavez-DeRemer, co-sponsored the PRO Act.
Sure.
Because I was mentioned in Elise Stefanik, she mentioned me by name in her op-ed that was against the PRO Act. So why is she now endorsing somebody who is for it?
I mean, John Lopez is saying, well, that's why I'm trying to catch up a little bit here, because we were talking about, but he was in Milwaukee. We know, you and I know that. And Lori was Sean O'Brien's choice.
Yes, he's right about that.
Yeah, so, I mean,
he thought, but she only became his choice when she lost her seat.
Right. So here, Lori won because Democrat Ken Schrader lost the primary to leftist Jamie Skinner, who lost to Chavez.
Well, she won because the District 5 was reconfigured to be more purple that year. So she won by, and the person that she was running against was really, I was watching all of those debates with that person that he just mentioned.
Right.
That was not a good candidate either.
Right. And so John's bringing up that Schrader voted against PRO Act in 2020, but for it, I think he means in 2021. But why are we getting, again, shouldn't we be focused on Lori?
Right. Lori, I think Lori was just knowing that the PRO Act was dead in the water anyways. And I mean, you're talking about the PRO Act's been around since 2019. She only put her name on it in August, just a few short months ago, well after this new, the PRO Act, when it was in this HR 20, which is the name of the one that was introduced in the 118th Congress. This Congress right now is about to come to an end. She only put her name on it in August. It was introduced in August of this year. It was introduced in March of last year. So it's just, to me, it was just like a last ditch. I'm just guessing, maybe in her mind, it was a last ditch effort to appease the Teamsters and get that, try to win that seat with more union endorsements than her opponent had, and that it was just obviously it was a horrible mistake.
Right.
And I would like to sit down and go through it with her and say, do you actually agree with any of the provisions in the PRO Act? How can anybody support it?
I mean, she doesn't, does she?
She co-sponsored it.
Oh, never mind. I was getting, so John is making a good point that we kind of touched on, but American Workers doesn't include 1099 contractors to the head of the Teamsters.
I don't know what that means.
I think he's saying that when we were talking about American Workers, which is labor secretary, we're talking about American workers, he doesn't recognize 1099 independent contractors as those American workers. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but
no, Teamster Sean O'Brien wants the PRO Act.
yeah.
And part of the PRO Act is to corral as many independent contractors into becoming unionized employees as possible.
Yeah.
And it's not just for purposes of the NLRA, because it will, once it gets a foothold in federal law, if it were to pass, tentacles start reaching out. And then independent contractors would be, you should read I should read you what the U.S. Chamber of Commerce says about how the PRO Act would affect independent contractors in so many more egregious ways other than just the ABC test.
Yeah, I thought the whole point of like really switching things up here was to quit making these not bad decisions, awful decisions, and ruining everything that we do here.
Well, what we wanted, what really, as far as the Department of Labor is concerned, the damage is done to independent contractors with that DOL rule.
Mm-hmm.
It was finalized on March 11th of 2024. It went into effect, and it's a 6-factor test. And immediately there's all these lawsuits. Kim, Fight for Freelancers, and her people, or her fellow independent contractor journalists, are trying to appeal that. They didn't obtain standing. They're trying to appeal that, but our only hope to get rid of it right now is if the Fifth Circuit in Texas vacates it, like they vacated the joint employer rule. So if that happens, then we can all breathe a collective sigh of relief. But if it doesn't, then what is Trump gonna do? They have to go in there and rescind it, like Biden rescinded his, and replace it. But are they able to do that? Is it damaged, or is it too late? So really, a lot of it, we're talking about the Wage and Hours Division of the Department of Labor too. They're the ones that do all these enforcement, things on the independent contractor classification claims under the Fair Labor Standards Act. So who he appoints to that position, like the woman that's in there now, her name is Jessica Lumen or something.
Mm-hmm.
She's just, these people need to be pulled out by their root and tossed, know. And
I see John Lopez put, at least Julie Su ran an organization compared to the US DOL, but Sue's policies were terrible. To me, it doesn't, just personally, it doesn't matter that she ran an organization comparable to it, because the second part of your sentence is all that matters. She was terrible.
She's responsible for she was so inept at her job as the labor secretary in California that she bungled $40 billion in fraudulent payouts on unemployment insurance claims during the pandemic, that the state of California is suffering as we speak at the huge budget deficit, most of it that came from that. And all the companies are being forced to increase, they've increased payroll taxes on every business in California, because they're trying to recoup all of the losses of Julie Su.
Right. So, and then I see that my friend David is in Texas, and he said, I stopped gig work, and I didn't even know this yet. Basically the day he won, the next day, the oil field companies in his area or whatever exploded with job boards with much higher wages. So the next day after he was elected, those oil fields were like, let's bring them back.
That's good news.
So now let's see. Now there's an energy here that has been absent in a long time. I agree. That's what I'm hoping on with a lot of these things. The borders are all these things. I'm hoping these energies come back, like you're talking about, and just not only fix things, but like flip them upside down.
Yeah, but we don't want to. Usually in a Republican administration, the Department of Labor Secretary is going to be somebody who's well-versed in business and, is on the side of the business community, not on the side of labor unions.
So here's John's comment about Lori Chavez-DeRemer. DeRemer? Am I saying that right? It sounds right to me. DeRemer, like the
Lori
Reamer.
Chavez-DeRemer.
But he's saying that She won by a fluke in 2022. She co-sponsored PRO Act on July 15th, 2024. It was at play to unions for their endorsement. Karen, 100% right.
That's right, July.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just kind of shocking. She did some other things too, like she supported the expansion of public sector unions.
So
no, we're waiting
yeah.
with bated breath to hear that. But here's something I wanted to read to you because you were asking me about Vivek Ramaswamy and Musk. We have just learned, this is from Twitter, we've just learned that staffers for Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy have been calling around to first-term cabinet secretaries for Donald Trump, meaning Eugene Scalia at the Department of Labor, asking them to make two lists. One list would be career officials, those civil servants that stay in their jobs regardless of which administration comes in and out, and another one of political appointees. And next to those lists, they want them to put either an A or a B. The A is to keep or recruit that person, and the B is to blacklist or fire. Their goal is to basically cut back on government waste and basically destroy what they call the deep state of civil servants, of which Lumen would be one of them. And all of those people, there's the Department of Labor is overrun by union shells.
Yeah. I mean, maybe, I think that a lot of my listeners, and I know a lot of people that you talk to and stuff, and as you get older too. So if some of you younger people are going, wait, what? Like, big government is not good. And this is as big as it comes government. Like, we have this just ridiculous, so when I first heard about Doge, I was like, okay, sweet. They're going to go in and nope, that's not needed. Nope. But now I've seen that there's even people in the own party going, whoa, dude, chill. I don't know. Because I'm for what they're trying to do. I'm just wondering how hardcore it's going to be out of the gate.
Well, I don't know, but I mean, it's the bureaucrats that are entrenched that are the problems, and Lumen at the Wage and Hours Division administrator, whatever her title was, she was the one that put together, her and her cohorts were the ones that put together that DOL rule, the final rule that restricts independent contracting that we're all fighting now.
Right.
And so Julie Sue, she's just a figurehead of that effort. She didn't even want to touch it with a 10-foot pole when everybody was bringing up the ABC test and AB5.
So I see that John said, agreed on Sue, bundled the job. Point is, she has no experience running anything.
I disagree with you, John.
So
she's a business person with her. I think she's worth $6 million. She has a lot of business experience with the companies, with her family businesses. There's several different businesses that they have. She was a mayor of a town of, I don't think 26,000 people, Happy Valley it's called, for almost 10 years. That's executive experience. So I don't think that is, there's lots of arguments against her, but I don't think that's one of them.
So, and then John is saying HR 8426 public sector union bill.
Right. That was called I've read about that, and that's kind of like a messaging bill that had no chance of ever passing. It was just so people could just look. It's just for optics alone to support it. But yeah, she supported that, and that's not good either. We don't like that.
So as we are right now, how would you, as an overall grade for these 30 positions, not each one, what would you give this incoming cabinet as a grade? Not knowing what they'll do, who knows, but.
Well, I guess it'd be, but
would you fail them? Oh.
We'll see how long they all last. Is the question.
Right, but I'm saying, like, if they were going,
what happened with Jeff Sessions in the first 45?
Yeah, I'm just saying if we
Right
were going to
ahead.
be stuck with them for a few years, what would you rate this? And then like if we came back and rated it in 6 months on how they're doing, but like what would you rate it knowing what you know and agree and think right now?
I think it's a hell of a lot better than what we've got now.
But that
That's for
says
sure.
nothing. Like what
Yeah.
we have now is an F minus. We have like a 18% test
No, I
score
think
right
for the
now.
most part, there's gonna be a lot of shifts and it's gonna shake things up. It's several different departments,
Mm-hmm.
especially the more controversial picks, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like RFK and the board
Right. That's what
result.
I'm saying. There are some great ones in there.
Yeah, and Pam
That's why I was saying as a whole,
Bondi is
because
gonna
there's so
be.
many confusing ones like Lori.
Lori's confusing to our side. We'll
Right.
see what happens. See, these nominees have to go through a committee first. In
Sure.
her case, it would be the help committee, which will be led by Senator Cassidy of Louisiana, who's on our side. And she's meeting right now with all these different senators. And she met with that Mullen guy, the plumber who got into the brawl with Sean O'Brien
Mm-hmm.
at one of those hearings where they practically ripped each other's throats out. And
Yeah.
he was
Like
like,
Iraqi parliament.
right. And he tweeted saying how great it was to meet Lori Chavez-DeRemer. She's going to make a great, labor secretary. She's going to get confirmed. There's nothing we can do about it other than raise our voices to our senators and say, look, she's got to answer for her bad choices. Where she's got to explain what she really believes about the PRO Act, because she's going to get asked that question by Democrats. So, Ms. DeRemer, do you for sure think that right to work laws should be abolished in all 50 states? How is she going to answer that?
And also, how are you going to ever push that? I've always wondered that. Like
She's
if you
going
said,
to,
well, no, it's gone,
I'll
you're
tell
just
you,
going to
this
get
is my
states to
prediction.
secede even more than they have. They're going to go, no, we're not. Sorry.
This is my prediction what she'll do. Josh Hawley is coming up with his own version of a watered down PRO Act to give her cover. So she's going to say, well, there's things in the PRO Act that did give me pause for concern, but we're going to, I would support something along the lines of what Josh Hawley is coming up, or whatever. I mean, I don't know how she's going to wiggle her way out of it,
Right.
when she's asked a direct question, because the Republicans are probably going to treat her with kid gloves. Sorry to disappoint everybody out there who think that they're going to, drill her about this, but I don't think they are. We'll be lucky if Senator Tim Scott even asks her about her views about independent contracting.